If you're thinking about moving to Abbotsford, you've probably heard somebody say, doesn't it flood there? And honestly, that's not a dumb question. Flooding is a real topic here, but what most people get wrong is where the flooding actually happens, why it happens, and how it really affects buyers. So in this video, I'm not going to try to scare you or sell you anything. I just want to explain flooding in Abbotsford the way that locals understand it. That way you're not going to get blindsided later and make a huge mistake by buying in the wrong area. My name is Dilpreet. I'm based right here in Abbotsford, and I help buyers navigate this market with clarity and not pressure. This video is especially for first-time home buyers who are moving to Abbotsford, people relocating, or anyone who's heard mixed things about the flooding here in Abbotsford and you just want to know the truth. And just so you know, people like you reach out to me by email every week with the exact questions just like this. Okay, the first thing we need to clear up is Abbotsford does not flood evenly. Flooding here is highly location specific. So when people say Abbotsford floods, they're usually talking about Sumas Prairie, not the East Abbotsford hillsides, not most established neighborhoods, and not the entire city. If you only remember one thing from this video, remember this. When you ask, does Abbotsford flood? Or you shouldn't ask, does Abbotsford flood? You should ask, how does this specific area behave during heavy rain? Okay, first let's talk about Sumas Prairie, because this is where most of the headlines come from. Sumas Prairie sits very low. Historically, this land used to be a lake. It was drained for farming decades ago and now relies heavily on dikes, a pump station, and drainage systems. And when we get extreme rainfall combined with higher river levels, that system gets very, very stressed. That's when major flooding risk shows up, and this isn't like a one storm issue, it's a geography issue. And I'll even show you on this map here. Sumas Prairie is this whole region, this whole area right here. So this is Abbotsford. Sumas Prairie is right here on the other side of the highway, but yeah, that's where we see a lot of flooding. One area that it could flood from is the river here, which this hasn't been the major issue of this area. The flooding has actually been coming from the Nooksack River. So we had floods in 2021. We had floods this year in Abbotsford. The major flooding is actually from this Nooksack River, and that's why Washington, if we just zoom out, Washington actually had a ton of flood alerts this year. They got hit way harder. That's because the overflow from over here actually ended up crossing into the Canadian side, and that's where the major issues come from. It's not usually on the Canadian side the issues are coming from, it's the American side. So water filters in through here, the land's very low, and it just becomes a good area for drainage for the Americans. Now this is where local nuance also really matters. I actually grew up in Matsqui, which is another floodplain because it's farm area, and yes, we get flooding there too, but it's not the same type of flooding we hear or see in Sumas Prairie. In Matsqui, it's a bit more localized. It looks like water pooling in low spots, fields holding water longer, ditches and drainage systems getting overwhelmed when there is sustained rain. It's not like widespread evacuations like we've seen on the Sumas Prairie of Abbotsford. But it is something locals are aware of, and you see a very similar pattern in Clayburn Village. It's a beautiful historic area, but it's surrounded by farmland, relies on older drainage infrastructure, and during long periods of rain, water management becomes a very big issue there too. So this is why buyers get confused. They hear the word flooding and assume it means the same thing everywhere in Abbotsford. It doesn't. Flooding in Abbotsford is just one story, and it's a different story depending on where you are. And if we look into the map, this is all Matsqui right here in this area. I think Matsqui flooded like early 1900s is the last time it flooded, when the river overflowed, or the last time there was actually like a major flood. There was a pretty big dike here, so the chances of it flooding are I think quite low in comparison to Sumas. Sumas just can't stop the floods coming in from the States. But the issue is more or less, and because I lived here, I lived up in this area here, the issue actually becomes Clayburn Village. It's low, and we see all these kind of streams going through, but that causes an issue. This road tends to get shut down because of the flooding, and Clayburn Village, all this area right here, it just gets flooded. Year after year, I've seen it. It's not every year, but it's pretty frequent. I personally wouldn't, I mean, as nice as Clayburn Village is, I wouldn't want to buy down there because of this flooding. And if you're buying in Abbotsford and flooding is even a mild concern, here's what actually matters first. And that's microlocation. Not just the neighborhood, the street, what's uphill, what's downhill, where does the water naturally go. Two homes 5 minutes apart can have completely different risk profiles. Second, you want to look at property history. Not just did it flood, but where the water entered, what was repaired, and what mitigation was added. Third is insurance. This is big. Flood insurance is not automatic. A lot of buyers assume if the bank approves me, I'm going to be covered, but that's not always true. So you want to confirm overline flood coverage, what the deductibles are going to be, and what the exclusions are before removing any subjects. This is something I always slow buyers down on because it's much easier to ask now than regret it later. And again, people just like you email us every week to walk through this exact step. Now, who should be extra cautious? Let me be honest for a moment. Certain buyers should think harder about flood adjacent areas if flooding anxiety will keep you up at night. If you travel often in the winter, if you're stretching your budget and can't absorb surprises, that doesn't mean don't buy in Abbotsford. It just means choose the right area for your comfort level. A good purchase isn't just about the price, it's about peace of mind. Now, to be fair, people still buy in these areas for real reasons. There's more land, there's lower price points, rural or heritage lifestyle, long-term mitigation planning. Some buyers are comfortable with this calculated risk. They've done their insurance planning and they've priced in the trade-offs. So there's no right or wrong answer. There are only informed decisions. With that being said, a lot of people, I'm just going to zoom out here, the Huntington border, there's a community right here, and so we can see Sumas has flooded 2021 and this year. Nooksack overflowed, so there is a ton of flooding in this area. Fortunately, I think there was some flooding right around the border, this whole part of the States got hit pretty hard. That was all underwater. The homes here have gotten pretty lucky. They're kind of right in the danger zone, but they've gotten a bit lucky the last couple of floods that we've had. I would personally not buy in this area, but again, just like I said, everybody's going to be different. I would just avoid this area for that flooding risk and that reason. Otherwise, you're just basically, Sumas is all farmland. There is some little communities in here like Arnold, mainly farmland, but yeah, you'll see that this is a bit more of a community. You can kind of see the houses, a bit more prone to flooding risk. Areas that I personally would avoid, but again, and I can say this over and over and again, it all is really going to depend on you. Is this going to keep flooding year after year? No. At some point, is it going to flood again? Yes. We just had 2021, 2025. That was very close together. I don't expect that to always be the case, but who knows what's going to happen. So since 2021, flooding isn't ignored anymore. There's more transparency. There's stronger emergency responses. There's more of an infrastructure focus. But that obviously at the end of the day doesn't erase risk. But it does mean buyers today have more information, and information is leverage. So here's the real takeaway. Flooding in Abbotsford is not a reason to write off the city. It's a reason to slow down and ask better questions and understand the location deeply. The worst outcomes usually come from buyers who assume flooding isn't going to apply to them at all. So if you're thinking about buying in Abbotsford and want help understanding which areas make sense for you, the easiest way to reach me is by email, and I'll put that in the description below. People just like you reach out to us every week with questions just like this one. And if it makes sense after all that, you can always book a call. I've also linked that down below. And if you're still really early and you just want to know more about Abbotsford, the neighborhoods, I've also put a relocation guide down in the description below. It'll walk you through neighborhoods, lifestyle, and things buyers don't usually hear up front. I'll see you in the next video.